One variable that will affect your cast a lot is the actual line that you're using. These new spectras and braided lines are great. They have many benefits. One of the drawbacks is castability. Now, spectra has no stretch whatsoever. So what happens is when you cast and retrieve and cast and retrieve, your line is getting kind of soft on the spool. You know, it should be wound on very tight. You should be able to put your thumb nail to it, and it should feel like a piece of wood. Now, you're seeing mono here because we're using a mono top shot because mono casts better than spectra. The reason spectra doesn't like to cast well is because it's so limp, it tends to stick to itself. And when you're pulling on a fish, let's say you have a fish that's 50 yards out, you're putting the drag on him and you're pulling, what happens is that line will bury into itself without you even knowing it. You retrieve the line, you cover up the bury where the line is. Next time you cast, you're gonna backlash. So one thing to really keep in mind with spectra is keep it tightly wound on the spool and it will prevent problems later on. One thing I highly suggest is if you have a rod that's dedicated as a casting rod, like a jig stick, I suggest putting on a mono top shot, roughly the length that you typically cast. The reason is mono is a little bit stiffer, it's a little more forgiving, it tends to not want to backlash as easy. Now, gravity has a lot of effect on the way you cast, not just the lure that you're casting, but the line, the way it comes off of the reel. If you cast, and while the lure's flying through the air, if you hold the reel upright like this, gravity tends to want to pull down on the line and it's going to want to get underneath that spool and it'll backwind on you. Another thing is the surface tension of water. When the line's wet, doesn't matter if it's mono or spectra, it's still going to kind of stick to itself a little bit and gravity will kind of have an effect on that also. So when you cast and when you cycle through, hold the reel to the side. That way gravity's pulling the line this way rather than this way. And it helps to shed the water and stuff also and gets that surface tension and keeps the line from sticking. Another thing about the tennis ball is it's got some weight to it and it kind of simulates what it's like throwing a surface iron or even a heavy live bait. Even though it's round, it's not very aerodynamic. It does slow down significantly as it's going through the air. So this is a good demonstration tool. With an Avet reel, you're gonna notice that just above free spool, there's a little detent click. That's a bait setting, not a cast control setting. A lot of people assume that you have to have it in that position to cast. Well, that's gonna actually put drag on the reel, so you don't wanna do that. You want it all the way to free spool. Wrapped around your foot. Sorry about that.